Today, I'll be ranking all of the roller coasters at King's Dominion. Out of the 3 parks that I went to on my mini trip, I surprisingly rode the most at King's Dominion with a total of 12 credits. And I'm ranking all of them to see which one to come out on top at this amazing Cedar Fair park. But before we begin, Pantherian was sadly not open during our visit. I'm still so upset about that. But yeah, it won't be on the list, but other than that, let's begin. Last place is the wonderful Great Pumpkin Coaster. This is just a clone of the one at Kings Island. It's just a little ride that's good for kids and a good introductory ride for like toddlers and anyone that wants to get into roller coasters. It's also not too big for those little ones, and it goes around twice, so that's cool too. I'm just more surprised that the operators let 2 16-year-olds ride this because it just doesn't feel allowed for 2 people that big to ride this small of a ride. The other family coaster is Woodstock Express is up next. Another one that I'm surprised they even let us on because Woodstock Express is not that big of a ride. This is a good family coaster that it is a step up from Great Pumpkin Coaster, but overall it's just a alright Woody for the kids. It's smooth, which is good, and has some hills and turns that are bigger than Great Pumpkin Coaster, but at the end of the day, it's still a family coaster, and it's just a stepping stone one to get from this ride to bigger rides like Apple's Apple or Backlot Sun Coaster. 10th place is Apple's Apples. I thought this was going to be my least favorite in the park, and it wasn't quite that bad, but it's still the worst non-kids coaster at King's Dominion. Apple's Apples starts off with a drop that isn't huge, then rises up into some normal hairpin turns for a wild mouse. You get a lot of laterals, which is to be expected, but I'm not the biggest laterals guy out there, and I just don't like wild mouses in general. You finish the ride with 2 more smaller drops that are just alright, and then like 3 more turns that provide more laterals, but at the end of the day, it's just wild mouse, nothing that special here. A very unique ride in Reptilian is number 9. This is one of only 2 bobsled coasters in America and the only steel one left in the US. Even though it's low on the list, I enjoyed this one much more than Wild Mouse and is a legitimately good ride. I love how natural this ride feels, being that it works pretty much 100% off gravity. And also, this ride is sneaky intense, being that the last turns in Helix have a little bit of a bite and more intense than you think it would be. The only problem is that there is a slight rattle across the ride, but if you can get past that, you'll have a very good time. Up next is Tumbili. This ride is so hit or miss for me, and I think most people agree upon that. The first ride I got in the day was actually amazing, flipping a lot, and was much better than I thought it was going to be going into it. But my second ride of the day just flipped once. It was not nearly as good. It's also not that long either, maybe 25 seconds of ride time, and the layout isn't much either, legit only being little hills and drops across the track. If it was based on my first ride, it would have been higher, but averaging my 2 rides out, it lands at number 8 at KD. The premier launch coaster, Backlot Sun Coaster, lands here. I personally liked this one a little bit more than the ones at Kings Island, surprisingly. I thought that Backlot Sun Coaster was pretty smooth, all things considered, and was a little bit more punchy than the one at Kings Island. The Helix is just as intense as usual, being very, very intense for a family coaster. Then the couple turns after are pretty mediocre like usual. And then the finale going through the tunnel is also pretty cool. I like being in the dark there. The only knock is that the helicopter and fire effects don't work and haven't been used in years, and I wish they worked again, because that would have been really cool. Flood of Fear is number 6. Another clone that is the exact same one at Kings Island, but is still a solid looper. The launch is solid, and all the elements pretty much feel the exact same as the one at Kings Island. I had a friend that previously rode this telling me that the roughness was insane on this thing and was much worse than the one at KI, but that was pretty much a lie. It was the exact same. I did hear one thing, that it doesn't stop completely on the mid-course, but there was a guy on our train that had his phone out, so we hit the mid-course and completely stopped. It didn't really affect me a lot since the one at Kings Island does the exact same thing, but overall, decent looper. First of the top 5 is Dominator. I know that this is the longest floorless coaster in the world and has some redeemable qualities to it, but it just didn't hit for me. I still like it more than Rougarou, and my friend liked it, but I just think that floorless coasters are the worst B&M model out there. But besides that, the drop was solid, the loop was intense, the turns in the first half were pretty fun, and the Cobra roll was decent as well. But everything after the mid-course is so mediocre. The 2 corkscrews weren't whippy, and had some headbanging to it, and the final turns were just so boring, and just felt like a way to extend the ride time with no real thrill. Overall, it's just alright. The first non-kids Woody, Racer 75, is number 4. It's almost a direct copy of the one at Kings Island. I'm not realizing that like half the rides at this park are just clones from Kings Island. But it's slightly taller and has a different turnaround, but I thought it was pretty good. The lower the ground airtime hills have some fun pops of floater, and the bigger hills also have a little bit of airtime to them. But just like the one at Kings Island, the finer hills don't really provide much airtime to them, but are still fun. It's also super smooth, which I'm very glad for. I was praying that wasn't going to be that rough, and was surprisingly a good ride for me. Repira lands at number 3, but I still think it's kind of a disappointment. I thought this could have been the second best ride in the park, and it was close, but fell short in many aspects in my opinion. Even though it's only 4 months old, it's somehow rough, which makes 0 sense, and the first half is super lame. The launch is amazing, but after, it's just completely mid. That first overbank could have been a much better element to start off the ride. The implement is very basic, and the twisted hill doesn't have any air. But the second half is decent, being that the outer bank Helix is pretty cool. The corkscrew and final rolls are filled with hang time as well. If they could fix the smoothness, I think it could jump up to 2, but I think the real thing it's missing is a near miss. I'm surprised they didn't put one of those anywhere. One that surprised me a lot was Grizzly. This was a ride that I completely forgot was even at this park, and it came out and landed at the number 2 spot. The first drop is legitimately one of my favorite drops I've ever been on, and it's really, really good for a Woody. It's really steep, and in the back you are whipped out of your seat, and there's a twist halfway down, so you're yanked to the left. Then after a turnaround, you hit a quick ejector hill, which is good, but then you hit another one in a tunnel that has some of the best ejector in the entire park. You then hit a turnaround with a ton of strong laterals, which I actually surprisingly enjoyed. Then the second half is some more laterals and floater hills that can be rough, but are still very fun. Such an underrated ride, and if they could smooth out the second half, this legitimately could be a top 10 coaster that I've been on. Number 1 is obviously the RMC Twisted Timbers. This is debatably a top 5 coaster that I've been on, and I loved all of my 13 rides on this thing so much. The first drop is very good, and you get some good whip in the back going through the roll. Then you have a turnaround, hit back-to-back-to-back airtime hills that all have sustained ejector airtime. You hit a cutback and get to the part of the ride where every element is just a couple feet above the ground. You hit an airtime hill and an outer bank that is so powerful, maybe the most powerful moment on the ride. You then hit a 0G roll that is a solid inversion, then some Steve-esque hills to finish the ride. This ride is so powerful and has so many ejector pops, and the night rides on this thing are wonderful. Thanks for watching. Tell me your favorite ride from this lineup. Subscribe, go to my community tab. Check out more of my videos as well, but other than that, have a good day.